Quick disclaimer, if you love this book so much that it hurts to hear it being criticized, click off this video, this isn't for you. I've been sick as a dog this past week. Not with a cold, sick and tired of the characters in this book. Let's talk about After by Anna Todd. This book started out as a Harry Styles fanfiction on Wattpad, and by 2014 it was published by an imprint of Simon & Schuster as its own novel. In 2019, the first of 5 entire movie adaptations came out. I love a trashy romance. I love it bad. And if you tell me a movie is based off of a book that's based off of a Wattpad fanfiction, you're getting my ass in a seat expeditiously. Needless to say, I watched it the instant it came out in 2019, and it was one of the best, worst romance movies I had ever seen. But I'd never actually read the book until today. Tessa Young is an 18-year-old straight-A student, and her mother's dream for her entire life, is to go to the same university that she went to when she was in college. They say the name of the university several times in the book, but I cannot remember what it is. It's in Washington State, though. Tessa's goal is to become an English major, then eventually work at a publishing office, and eventually write her own book. She has a boyfriend named Noah who's very sweet and the exact kind of guy that her mom would want her to be with. Noah didn't deserve anything that happened to him in this story. I feel so bad for him. Noah deserved better. On the first day of college, she moves into her new dorm room, and she sees her new roommate and a couple of her friends there. All of them are heavily tattooed with lots of piercings, dyed hair, black clothing, and Tessa's mother instantly does not approve. And because Tessa's been raised by her mother, she also doesn't approve. But each of those students are really sweet and welcoming to Tessa, and they tell her, she's going to love it here, don't be nervous, you're going to have a great time, you'll fit right in. All except for one boy, who doesn't speak to her or really acknowledge her at all, who we learn is named Hardin Scott. As is typical of these romance books, she is instantly attracted to him, and there's just something about her that draws her in. Before she leaves, her mom gives her a lecture about the danger of parties and boys in college and tells her, you know, you're here to study, you're here for school, do your best. And she leaves. Tessa says goodbye to her boyfriend Noah and begins preparing for school on Monday. Oh my goodness. Hi, my name is Pepper. I love talking about stories, usually books, sometimes movies. If you like that, stick around. I also love reading trash romance novels, so if you like hearing about those, definitely stick around. The next day, after showering, she goes back to her dorm room wrapped up in her towel, and she sees Hardin Scott laying on her roommate's bed. And of course, a strange boy in her room, she freaks out. She's like, can you please leave? Steph isn't here. Why did you just let yourself in? And he tells her he has a key. He let himself in. And not to flatter herself because he's not interested. So she gets dressed and eventually her roommate comes in. Steph is wonderful. I love her. She is so supportive. She is so kind. One of the several people in this book that are great to Tessa that she could use as an example of how she should allow people to treat her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Steph convinces Tessa to go to the party that's being held at Hardin's frat house. Honestly, it doesn't take that much convincing. Despite how much Tessa goes on and on about how these people are nothing like the people she typically hang out with and how she would never go to a party, but she caves. She puts on a dress that looks more suited for church than a college party. Her roommate's like, are you sure you want to wear that? She's like, yeah, why? It's my nicest dress. And she's like, okay, I mean, it's a bit formal, but all right. Starting here, there's a theme that you need to make note of, and that is that Hardin is an incredibly rude person. He insults her from the first time they speak to the last time they speak. He is constantly ridiculing her and just incredibly harsh to her all the time for no reason. She has a terrible time at the party. Steph's friends make fun of her, including Hardin. She gets a drink spilled on her, and when she goes to the bathroom to try and clean it up, she accidentally walks in on Hardin making out with another friend from Steph's group, Molly. Later in the night, one of the guys tells Tessa, hey, Steph is really, really drunk. Can you take her upstairs to one of the rooms so she can sleep it off? And she begrudgingly helps out. Inside the bedroom that they happen to be in, she noticed there's a really big bookcase filled with books. And as someone who loves to read, naturally, she checks out what titles are there and even finds her favorite book, Wuthering Heights, on the shelf. A moment later, Hardin storms into the room and snatches the book from her, asking, why she's in his room and she needs to get out. He calls her Teresa, which is her full name, and she hates being called Teresa because that reminds her of her father. She asks him, why are you in a frat? You don't really seem like a fraternity kind of guy. She explains the situation about Steph. He doesn't care. They both need to get out of his room. She's so overwhelmed by the party and how he's treating her that she runs to the bathroom crying. She calls up Noah for comfort, and he's shocked that she's at a party in the first place. The previous day, her mom had warned her about not going to parties, and here she was. But she doesn't want to be lectured by Noah, so she hangs up. He's surprised that she's crying, but he lets her know that there's a guest room for her and Steph to stay in overnight if they would like to. She thanks him, she goes to sleep, and the next morning he drives the both of them back to their dorm. This is where my favorite character gets introduced, Landon Gibson. He is a sweetheart, my wonderful darling boy. Another one of the wonderful people in this book that tries to talk sense into Tessa, but she doesn't listen to him. Tessa and Landon meet on their first day of British literature and find that they have a lot in common and hit it off. Throughout the story, Landon becomes a close friend of Tessa's, and Tessa finds out that he's actually Hardin's stepbrother-to-be. Hardin's father and Landon's mother are soon to be married and live in a house together off campus. Landon also lives with them, but Hardin lives on campus at the frat house. Hardin is completely against the union and doesn't want anything to do with his dad, so he tries to stay away as much as possible. Hardin also has British literature with them, and he ends up sitting at the same table as Tessa and Landon. For the first time, Tessa says something that is going to be a recurring theme, that Hardin brings out the worst in her. And boy, is she right. Later, she talks to Noah over the phone. He lets her know that her mom is still disappointed in her for going to a party. She's shocked that he told her mom on her and feels a little bit like he's her little brother than her boyfriend, which completely valid. This is a really weird red flag. But despite any guilt she might feel for going to that party, she lets Steph convince her to go to another one at the same house. This next section I like to call when shit hits the fan, because oh boy does it. Tessa likes to think that she's a good person, and she's not. That might be the most infuriating thing about this book. I'm lying. No, it's not. During a game of Truth or Dare, she ends up revealing that even though she and her boyfriend have been dating for 2 years, she's never had sex before. Some of them are shocked that she's a virgin, and others are not surprised since she's so prissy and uptight. Side note, I think this whole conversation was ridiculous. She was a teenager, she was in high school. No one should be pressured into having sex before they're ready, and that is especially so for teenagers. She's dared to take a shot of vodka, her first drink ever. She takes a couple of shots. She tries to keep going until Hardin decides to intervene and cuts her off. She's a bit mad at him for that, but if it is your first time drinking and you are going in hard, somebody that cares about you is well within their right to be like, hey, let's slow down a bit. Hardin is dared to kiss Tessa, and she refuses, and she storms away. She stumbles away. She's incredibly intoxicated, and goes outside to call Noah, who is shocked and disappointed that not only is she at a party, but she's drunk and at a party. She finds Hardin's bedroom and reads until he runs in, yelling at her to get out. And honestly, he's valid in that, because he did already tell her, I don't like when anyone's in my room for any reason. They start a screaming match, and Tessa asks him, why does he hate her so much? He says that she probably had a perfect life where she got everything that she wanted. And she tells him, no, my life was actually really difficult. My alcoholic father left when I was 10 years old, and when I was 16, I had to get a job and help my mom pay the bills. But one key thing that Tessa learns is that Hardin doesn't drink alcohol. She ends up staying the night again in the same guest room, but this time there's a drunk guy passed out in the other bed, and though she feels a little bit unsafe, she decides to stay. She wakes up to that drunk guy trying to take advantage of her, and she runs upstairs to Hardin's room for safety. Hardin tells the guy off and lets Tess stay for as long as she needs to calm down. He has a rare moment of empathy, and he comforts her when she starts crying. Naturally, she takes this opportunity to kiss him, to start making out with him. After a bit, she comes to her senses and stops and says, and I quote, "This isn't me. I don't get drunk and I don't cheat on my boyfriend at parties." This is only the beginning of her lack of accountability. She spends a lot of time saying, oh, what I'm doing isn't fair to Noah, but she doesn't ever actually do anything about it until she's forced to. It's 5 a.m., but she leaves. She walks home, and when she gets back to her dorm, she finds Hardin sitting on her bed. Apparently, he had spent the last 2 hours driving around trying to find her, and before they're able to even talk about how thoughtful that is, her mom starts pounding at the door, furious. Noah told on her again. They have a huge argument with all of them, and at the end of it, she resolves to be a better girlfriend to Noah and to stay away from Hardin and Steph and their friend group. They go out to breakfast, and Noah remains blissfully unaware that his girlfriend cheated on him. She does eventually talk to him and say, "Hey, it's not cool that you tell on me to my mom. Can you stop? It's weird." And he agrees, and he holds to that promise, even when he could go against it just to hurt her, because he is a wonderful person and did not deserve anything that Tessa does to him. Hardin visits Tessa at her dorm a few days later, and they end up making out. Steph enters the room, and the two of them jump apart and try to act like nothing happened. Later, after Hardin leaves, the two of them talk, and Tess learns that Hardin doesn't date. Ever. He's only ever friends with benefits, and if she wants to get involved with him, she should make sure that she won't develop any feelings for him. Steph says that she's seen many girls develop feelings for Hardin, and it never ends well for them. The next day in their literature class, the professor asks what they think about their assigned reading, Pride and Prejudice, and what they think about the characters. And Tessa and Hardin have this big back and forth argument in the lecture hall, where they're so clearly projecting their own feelings into the characters. Tessa's like, "Well, if Mr. Darcy wasn't such an asshole, then maybe Lady Elizabeth would have liked him sooner." And Hardin's like, "Well, if Elizabeth wasn't throwing herself at him." It's so ridiculous and it's so embarrassing. The entire class is watching them argue. I can imagine being them or being in that room in that situation. But Tessa storms out and Hardin follows her, and they have this big screaming match outside that's drawing attention. Tessa cries, Hardin apologizes, and they agree to make up and be friends. And this cycle continues the entire rest of the story. They fight, Hardin yells insults, she cries, he apologizes, they get back together, they fight again. Over and over and over and over. Hardin plans a hangout for them the next day, and they go down to a river to swim. She's hesitant at first, but he convinces her to get in the water, and they have a really good time. But then they start flirting heavy, and he ends up giving it to her digitally on the riverbank. I skimmed through this part because I'm not trying to read all that, but Hardin's dialogue when he's trying to seduce her is so cringy. Jesus. She says she doesn't like dirty talk, but when Hardin does it, it's hot. Is it? Are we listening to the same dude talk? Yee. On the ride back to her dorm, Noah calls her and she ignores it. And she tells Hardin that she's gonna break up with him. Hardin tells her she is free to break up with her boyfriend if that's what she wants, but don't drag him into this. This ain't got shit to do with him. It's not like they're dating now, so don't break up with him on my accord. This breaks her heart and she jumps out of his car and runs to her room and starts crying. And I'd feel bad for her if her roommate didn't tell her exactly this, like the day before. But Steph did say that Hardin typically makes clear to girls that he's not interested in dating, and he hadn't said that to Tessa yet. We'll find out why later. At this point, I just want to touch base with you and let you know that this is the point in the story that I like to call the point of no return, because everything after this is downhill and swiftly. She doesn't want her roommate to end up convincing her to go to another party, so she calls her boyfriend and begs him to leave school immediately so that he can come and spend time with her as a distraction, but she doesn't say that, and he agrees. He gets a permission slip to leave school, he drives the 2 hours to get to her college, and they have a cozy little movie night. He is such a wonderful person. Hardin ends up interrupting their little movie date, and Tessa's afraid that he's going to tell Noah what happened at the river. He doesn't, ends up leaving, and they go back to their movie. She tries making out with Noah to recapture that fire that she experienced with Hardin, and because of their previously established boundaries for their relationship, Noah doesn't try to push things too far. The next night, after another relaxing evening with Noah, she gets a call from Landon saying that Hardin has gone over to his father's house, has drank half a bottle of scotch, and started smashing Landon's mother's dishes. He has smashed all of her glasses, smashed all of her plates, and overturned a china cabinet. Apparently, he was calling out Tessa's name, so Landon thought to call kill her in hopes that she could control the situation. Hardin's violent outburst is because his dad told him over the phone that he's getting married to Landon's mother and that he'd like for him to attend the wedding. Hardin was having none of that. She tells Noah that she has to borrow his car and go drive to check on Hardin. And he's like, Hardin? Why? Let me come with you. He says, no, I have to do this by myself. And she drives there. Sure enough, broken glass everywhere. Hardin's in the background, belligerent. And Tessa sees how truly ugly Hardin is on the outside. Because with his inhibitions lowered, he tells her some of the most hurtful things she could ever hear. And you know what she says? She says that being here with Hardin, even though he's drunk and angry, makes her feel more alive than anything else. She goes inside to help Landon clean up the broken glass, and Hardin comes in to apologize to her. And they have another argument, this time with a back and forth where Tessa says, all you do is hurt me, I'm done, you're so cruel. And Hardin's like, I need you, please stay. I want to be good for you. She lets him convince her to stay the night. She doesn't send a text to Noah. She doesn't give him a phone call. She just decides, let me turn my phone off and hang out with this boy for a night. She gives him the old handy dandy over the underwear. And the next morning she sneaks out before he wakes up. On the drive back to her dorm and to her boyfriend, she tells herself, doing this is so cruel to Noah. It's not fair to him. I'm a terrible person for this. And she acknowledges that this is a terrible thing to do to a person, but she doesn't change. Once with Noah, she lies to him about what happened, and of course he was incredibly worried about her and also angry that she stayed the night at Hardin's house. And then Hardin barges into the room and forces her to tell Noah what happened between them. Oh child, the ghetto. The ghetto couldn't be me. I tell you what. Poor sweet Noah starts crying and he leaves. And Tessa chases after him, trying to convince him to let them talk about it. And he tells her that he needs some time to think and that he loves her, and then he drives home. That is more grace than she deserves, but I continue. At this point in the story, I can't stand her ass. She mopes around all week, but she feels terrible over what happened. Steph gives her a makeover and convinces her to go out to dinner with them before they go to a party, and she agrees to the dinner but says that she'll go home instead. She doesn't expect Hardin to be there, but lo and behold, he is, and everyone is giving her compliments about how amazing she looks, and Hardin is clearly trying to keep his anger inside. Hardin also insists on driving her home, and she doesn't really have much of a choice because the other driver had a couple of beers at the restaurant. Once she gets home, she calls Noah, and he tells her he's willing to continue their relationship as long as she doesn't see Noah anymore, and that she promises that this type of thing won't happen again. She is overjoyed, but don't let that fool you because she and Hardin end up in the same bed that very night. That's because he showed up at her bedroom door drunk and begging her to let him stay over. The next morning while they're out getting breakfast, they run into Hardin's dad, who, believing that they're dating, invites the two of them to dinner that night. Tessa agrees, even though Hardin is having none of it, and they have a fight about that. This is one fight that I don't think is silly because Hardin's relationship with his dad is incredibly strained. His dad was an alcoholic until Hardin was about 14 years old, and his father ended up leaving him and his mother to move to the United States. His mother still lives in London and struggles to pay her bills, and he thinks it's unfair that she has to do that while his dad lives in a mansion with his new fiancé and stepson-to-be. Tessa is of the idea that because Hardin's dad is trying and wanting to be in his son's life again, that Hardin should let him in. And I say that's not Tessa's place. She did not live with Hardin's dad. She did not experience the things that Hardin experienced growing up. She has no right to tell him whether or not he should make up with his dad just because his dad is trying. It's especially not her place to tell him, well, I'm going to that family dinner with or without you, and if I go without you, I'll just bring another dude. What? This threat ends up working, and the two of them go to the dinner. She learns that Hardin's dad is the chancellor at their university, and he lets her know that he has a connection at a publishing house, and if she's interested, he can set up an interview for her. She is delighted. They end up having another fight at the house. Hardin says some incredibly hurtful things to her, and I mean very hurtful. And she tells him she's done, she's not doing this anymore, which is a lie because they start making out and she spends the night at his house again. This time she sleeps in a spare bedroom and she wakes up in the middle of the night because she hears Hardin screaming in his sleep. She goes into his room, wakes him up, comforts him, and stays with him for the rest of the night. This is something that Steph had mentioned previously, that Hardin has nightmares, but she didn't go into any detail, and Tessa has now seen that for herself. At some point he says that he sleeps better when she's around, which she doesn't believe given all the other bullshit that spews out of his mouth, but this is when she realizes that, oh, there might be some truth to what he's saying. The next morning they have another fight on the way to her dorm, and when she gets there she sees Noah waiting on her bed for her. He decided to drive down and surprise her, and she wasn't there the entire night. Hardin comes in and it looks like the two boys are going to fight, but Hardin ends up confessing his feelings for her and saying that he wants to be more for her, he wants to be with her, and she tells Noah to get out. He pleads with her saying, you know, we've been together since we were kids, why are you doing this to me? And she tells him to leave, that she's made up her mind. But don't worry, she'll change it again 20 more times before the end of the book. Two things that I want to add into the story but nowhere really seemed like a good spot is that one of the friends in like Steph and Hardin's group is named Zed, and he's kind of interested in Tessa. He flirts with her a little bit, he compliments her. He's a really sweet guy, but Tessa's focus is on Hardin. Tessa is also very judgmental of what the other girls are wearing, especially if they're wearing anything revealing. And when I mean revealing, I mean like a tank top. And especially for character Molly, who Hardin was making out with at the beginning of the story. Every time that Molly is with Hardin or talking to Hardin, Tessa slut-shames her. This isn't something that she does to Steph. It's solely because Molly also likes Hardin and Tessa is jealous of that. And that's another reason that I dislike Tessa. All of the names that she calls Molly are really unnecessary. Granted, Molly is not a nice person at all. She goes out of her way to insult Tessa constantly. I like to call this section, wow, we didn't see that coming. There's another party at the frat house. There's one every single weekend, and Hardin didn't invite her to this one. She hears about it and is invited to it by the others in the group, and she's so saddened by this that she decides to stay home and mope instead. She calls Landon, asks how he's doing, see if they want to chat, catch up, solely because she wants a distraction from thinking about Hardin. And Landon invites her to come over. His mom is baking some cupcakes and they'd love to have her. Landon convinces her to go to the party anyways, and when she's there, she sees Molly sitting in Hardin's lap. Even though she's horrified, she doesn't leave. And the group decides to play Truth or Dare again, because they're all 14, apparently. I don't think I've played Truth or Dare since middle school. She is dared to kiss Zed, which she does to spite Hardin, and in another round she's dared to go upstairs with Zed for 10 minutes, and she does. Again, to spite Hardin. While there, Zed says that he doesn't want to do anything, he just wants to talk. And he ends up asking her on a date. He tells her, you don't have to give me an answer right now, you're drunk, tomorrow you can give me an answer. And she agrees. In another round, Hardin and Molly are dared to kiss, and they do. And Tessa runs outside crying. It is so hard for me to have sympathy for Tessa. Hardin and Tessa end up having a screaming match outside. She slaps him. She says that she's done with him for real this time. She calls Landon to pick her up. She and Hardin keep arguing. Hardin confesses that he loves her. She doesn't believe him, and then she goes home. They do it in front of everybody too. Embarrassing. Later, they end up having another argument where he takes back his love confession and also insults her repeatedly, and she admits to herself that she really does love him back. Tessa ends up going on that date with Zed, and she has a nice time, and he's really sweet to her, but she's thinking of Hardin the whole time. Zed, Tessa, Landon, and Landon's girlfriend, who's visiting that weekend, go to the campus bonfire just to hang out and have fun. And Hardin shows up. She and Zed end up leaving to go and hang out at Zed's apartment. And while she's kissing Zed, she realizes, oh my god, Hardin really does love me. and she leaves abruptly. She drives around looking for him and eventually finds him back at the stadium where the bonfire was. She finds him bloody and beaten up, but he won't tell her why or who he fought with, and they end up having another screaming match. She begs him to let her take him home and clean him up, and while there, they have another huge fight. He says probably the most hurtful things he has said the whole book, and she tells him she loves him, and then they make up. And this is where I said, I'm tired of this, Grandpa. I was only 60% of the way through the book, and I realized I don't have it in me to go through 200 more pages of this. I can't do this anymore. I skimmed the rest of the book because I had this video to finish, and they do this over and over and over. You telling me there's 4 books in this series and 5 movies? This shit got repetitive so quick. Let me tell you what happens in the rest of the book. It took about 200 pages for this to be explained. Her mom finds out that her and Hardin are still together, and she tells her, if you don't drop this man from your life, I'm cutting you off. Of course, Tessa doesn't listen until Tessa finds out that the reason Hardin is with her in the first place is because during that first game of Truth or Dare, he was dared to take her virginity. From that point forward, all of his advances towards her were in hopes that he could fulfill that dare. Unfortunately, he also fell in love with her during that time, but now that Tessa knows the truth, she doesn't believe a word he says. He is distraught and he is desperate to win her back. But for once, she has some self-respect and doesn't go back to him. The book ends with him desperately trying to win her back to no avail. And if you want to find out what happens next, you gotta read the next book. I can't do this anymore. If you want a good, fun movie night with some friends and have a good laugh together, watch the movie. God, Tessa was awful. Hardin was worse. Obviously, he was incredibly abusive, and throughout the story, Tessa becomes physically abusive towards him. Like she said before, he brings out the worst in her. If you want to hear me rant about another terrible romance story, just you wait. I already have some lined up. And if you have any suggestions that you want me to talk about, please drop them in the description. I am always on the hunt for them. I also love talking about really good books, but the YouTube algorithm doesn't really like those videos as much, so I'm trying to figure out where to put them in. That's all I have today. That's all I have left to give today. I'll see you later.